Well, I've been using the iPhone 10 since November, and I think it's safe to say, yeah, I could go for the larger model. A lot of you have been asking for me to do an iPhone 10 several months later review. With 5 months just around the way, more of what I've been thinking about regarding the iPhone 10 is not necessarily how the 10 has been performing. It's been performing fine. Face ID works really well, I still love my display, and usually when I want to pick up a device and browse social media, text people, or really do anything with, the iPhone 10 is my go-to. It's just a pleasure to use, and I can't wait for all of those gesture features and Face ID to be available on the iPad, which it isn't yet, but overall I don't really have much to add on what I previously said about the iPhone 10 in my review, which is just that this is the best smartphone ever. Between devices it works with and it's still compatible with, the camera's amazing, the OS, for me at least, has been very fluid and reliable, being able to record 4K at 60 and AirDrop, all of that's great, with one growing issue I notice every single day. While the iPhone 10 does have the largest display of any iPhone, the width of the iPhone 10 is the same of that as a regular iPhone 8 or 7, not a Plus model. Now, of course, Apple had limited supplies with the iPhone 10. They didn't have a ton of Face ID sensors or even a ton of OLED displays, and I think they were very, very smart last year to make sure that they tried to find a one-size-fits-all situation, and I think for that, they did a perfect job. A 5.8-inch display with this aspect ratio means that people who preferred the small size got a form factor that fit that, and people who preferred the Plus model also got an even larger display, and of course that dual camera supports, a great battery life. Supplies were limited, so they found a one-size-fits-all situation, but now that we're making our way into 2018, as I occasionally will go back to an iPhone 7 Plus to use it as my work phone, as in trying to remember Tailosive Talks, Tailosive Gaming. I have all that logged in on my iPhone 7 Plus, which I usually keep around just as a reminder that I have other channels to manage as well, and I should promote them on social media, because for a long time they've pretty much been neglected. And what I realized while going back and forth between a 7 Plus and a 10 is that, yeah, while the 10 has the largest display ever, because its width is pretty narrow, it means that especially in landscape mode, you really start to realize that this phone isn't necessarily better at displaying content. Because the Plus models still keep that 16:9 aspect ratio, it means that when you're typing in landscape mode, the keyboard is pretty easy to type on. Landscape mode on this thing is not really that practical. As well as viewing content like in Safari. If you go into landscape mode on an iPhone 10, you don't get that multiple tabs option, and you're looking at a much narrower view of the website itself. And every day I've been using it, while I'm still liking it, I'm starting to understand why I would want to make that switch up to a 10 Plus. There are some new subscribers out there, in case you were wondering. This is a 3D printed mock-up of the iPhone 10 Plus, what it's rumored to be the size of, at a 6.5-inch display. By far, the largest iPhone we have ever seen. Right after getting the largest display we've ever seen, now we'll have the largest form factor. So having this 3D print around is a really good reminder of what this generation of iPhone 10 Plus is going to feel like in terms of ergonomics, which definitely is not going to be the better solution for everyone. There are plenty of people out there that I think are going to find the 10 Plus just way too big and not easy to use, especially if they stick with the classic placement of Control Center and the classic swipe up to go home. If you don't have big hands, the 10 Plus I think is definitely not going to be for you. But I'm predicting in the 2018 smartphone lineup a change from the past 2 years. The Plus model is not going to be more popular than the smaller version, which we saw with the 7 Plus and 8 Plus iPhones. More people want that dual camera, more people want that screen size. I don't think it'll be the same when Apple releases these two iPhones again. We have very limited rumors about the iPhone 10 Plus, but as far as we know right now, it's very possible that they might go back to the LCD display technology on the 5.8 version of this year's iPhone 10 in order to save on costs and perhaps adopt the ProMotion display that a lot of people liked in iPads. But we're also getting reports that perhaps only one iPhone this year will get OLED displays, that being the iPhone 10 Plus, with an increased pixels per inch. So this could approach the pixel density of around 500 ppi, which would definitely mean ultra high resolution display, surpassing that of even 2K, much higher than this one, meaning that not only will it be the largest display in an iPhone, it will be the best looking, hopefully, if they get color temperatures right. They're still in talks with different companies on which display manufacturers are going to cover all of the parts of the 10 Plus. But in case you were wondering, the 10 Plus form factor is only slightly higher than that of a regular Plus model phone, like an iPhone 7 Plus or 8 Plus. Basically the same width though, which is what to keep in mind. iPhone 10, when in comparison to a regular sized 8 or 7, is about the same width. The only difference is the 10 is a little bit taller. So this, the 10 Plus, would be doing that same ratio to the Plus model iPhones, meaning that it's slightly taller, but the width is the same, which means that displaying content is easier, multiple tabs in Safari is easier, landscape mode keyboard viewing is easier, whereas landscape on the 10 right now just kind of looks bizarre and isn't as common. You can't really read any of the text above the keyboard. And I'm still really curious to see if Apple will try to make exclusives to the Plus model despite like batteries, maybe an extra gig of RAM. That's kind of a given if you have more form factor to stuff your lithium battery in. Most of the circuitry stays the same size. Battery life on the 10 Plus would likely be a lot better. But now that we have a dual camera on the smaller version with the regular 10, and of course we'd have a dual camera on this, what kind of exclusives would Apple make for the larger tier? Maybe even software. A lot of people are theorizing the idea that they might do picture-in-picture or even split-view multitasking, which has been a long requested iOS demand, only on the 10 Plus. Given that this is a 6.5-inch display, you're almost getting into the tablet market at that point. Maybe Apple will decide that when your display is this big, maybe light forms of split view are okay. Maybe picture-in-picture is okay. I've used picture-in-picture on some Android smartphones before, and I usually think that displays that small having picture-in-picture, it's just covering up too much of the screen. I'm constantly having to move it when it gets in the way, so I'm gonna go ahead and trust Apple on that one and say if they think it's okay, if they think it's right, then it probably will be. I would like to have a demo of how iPhones having picture-in-picture mode would look and how it would operate, because even on iPads it operates a little bit differently than Android picture-in-picture does. They keep it into individual corners. You can slide it off screen really quick and bring it back in, whereas on Android typically you can pop the media player out and put it wherever you want. You can put it directly in the edges. You can kind of watch half of it. But if Apple's able to come up with some unique software exclusives for just the 10 Plus, I think a lot of people might be like, well, that's kind of awkward and large, but maybe I'll go for it. I want those software features that I'm not going to get on a regular iPhone 10. But yeah, either way, I think it's safe to say that whatever the largest tiered iPhone that's coming out this year in September, I'll likely be upgrading to that one. I can imagine price probably being very expensive and will likely be the highest criticism of the 10 Plus. My guess is that it's going to start around $1,200 to $1,400, as a lot of people theorize this one would. And while people watching this may be like, that's insane, who would buy that? Keep in mind that while this is Apple's top-selling iPhone of all time, more people buying this than any other iPhone release, most of which are buying the 256 gigabyte option. You know, plus tax, plus fees, that means that most people buying iPhone 10s, on average, are spending around $1,200, maybe more. I paid a little bit over $1,200 for mine, so getting some software exclusives, this massive display, being able to look at more content, and a larger battery life with the higher pixels per inch, all of that for an extra $100 to $200, I think a lot of people might be swayed that way, and I think that's why Apple's considering this gargantuan size iPhone. Let me know what you think of the iPhone 10 Plus in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.